Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Myths, Mysteries, and Majesty. Tonight, we had to be flexible again, just the same thing we did a couple of weeks ago with Dane. Uh, our guest canceled for tonight, and I'm so thankful that Doug is back for the third time on our podcast. He'll be joining me tonight in reading some real life uh, well, mysterious and scary stories, which perfectly fit into the overall theme of the podcast. And before we start reading some of the stories for tonight, Doug, thank you so much for joining us for tonight. Can you just please share something about you within like few sentences for people that still are not acquainted with your work?
Oh, sure. So I've worked with people who see spiritual things. They see spirits. I have a little website called seersc.com. A book out about spiritual warfare, peace in your home or peace in your house, spiritual cleansing of life and land. And we'll have another book out about the seer thing coming out soon. It's done finally. I think last time we spoke, it wasn't done. It is done. It's out. Um, it's out for public. We're working on getting it published. So that's a little bit about me, high level.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll be publishing Doug's link so you can support his work. For those people who are not so much familiar with his work, I would just encourage you to go a few months back in our episodes and check out some of his work. His books are amazing. They're filled with biblical references and personal experience. They're not just some vague stuff that he's inventing, but he's a serious researcher. And I had this honor to meet Doug in person a few
Mhm.
weeks ago, and that was a blast. He's the first person whom I had a guest and then met in person so far, and I enjoyed. And I'm looking forward for the same for meeting some other people in the future as well.
Can
uh
I just share something kind of real cool that
yes.
happened today? So I'm in Central Illinois, small town, and my mother-in-law's church, a little country church in the middle of nowhere, middle of cornfields, basically, are going through a transition, looking for a new pastor, and they invited me to speak over the course of December. And I've been part of 3 church plants years ago. I haven't been a part of a church, though. Oh, well, I mean, I attend a church, but I haven't been a leader in a church for, probably 7 years. So this is the first Sunday in 7 years I've spoken somewhere, and it was also coincidentally, my daughter, who is up in the church there in Chicago and the youth group there. She's a leader in the youth group, while she attends seminary. She was asked a couple days ago to speak at their youth group, and so she did that today, and it was just neat that father and daughter were both speaking, and I just love that. I love that spiritual heritage. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I met your family, and they're all wonderful, godly people. So I can only encourage you that the legacy you're leaving behind you, Doug, is amazing, both when it comes to your family, ministry, and books. Even coming to this channel, all this will be digitally. Uh, I mean, it will be archived as digital media, and it will be accessible easily for so many people, even past our time. So I just want to encourage you. The work you're doing is huge. It's important. It's godly, and I'm just looking forward to hear more stories and testimonies coming from your side, and more
Yeah,
books. More
there's
books. I want you to write more books
yeah,
and to share
there's
more
more
books with me.
there's more things coming. Stay tuned, but let's get on with what we have today.
Yes. So we'll be continuing with the same author we covered 2 weeks ago because she has very interesting titles. I can't deny. I posted the link for this author in the video so you can buy her book and support her. Again, her name is Linda Godfrey, and the book we'll be reading tonight from is called Monsters Among Us. I mean, come on. With a title like that, how can you not buy a book? Um, so since I'm in Chicago and Doug is in Illinois, I wanted to be a little bit subjective and biased, which is okay. We all are. And start reading chapter 21, which is called Bigfoot in Chicago. Okay, so we'll be reading simultaneously and just giving our comments. It'll be very similar to what Dane and I did 2 weeks ago. Okay, so I'll be starting. Despite the spectacular examples of Skinwalker Ranch reviewed earlier here, eyewitness accounts of Bigfoot or other creatures caught in the act of entering or exiting unidentified light objects or portal like structures in the sky are fairly rare in the annals of cryptid lore. Reports of unknown lights simply spotted in the same vicinity as sightings or strange creatures, however, occur more frequently. Anomalous lights, as we've noted throughout this book, can manifest in myriad shapes. Sometimes they form spheres or columns, other times they resemble craft like UFOs. They may or may not display obvious connections with other phenomena, but establishing that odd lights are frequently seen in hot spots or cryptid sightings is important to our study. Here is an older but previously unpublished report of an accident that occurred in a Chicago forest preserve, where a decades long history of strange lights and sounds preceded sightings of a hairy bipedal creature and a UFO. Okay, I've been in Chicago for 15 years and I have unfortunately not heard about anything similar happening when it comes to the suburbs and forest preserves. I know that there are animals when you drive through these forest preserves. Some animals suddenly rush out on the road and they can smash your car. You can kill them. You can get in an accident. I know those stories, which is pretty common and normal. I have not heard anything yet when it comes to supernatural so far. Okay. A retired state and federal government worker with a degree in biology from Northeastern University contacted me in February 2015 to share his creature encounter, the memory of which he'd been trying unsuccessfully to banish since 1967. He asked that his name be withheld, so I will call him John Turner. Turner had set out at sunrise on one warm August morning of that year to ride his new bike on some forest preserve trails in an area along the Des Plaines River. Des Plaines is just another town in the suburbs of Chicago. In Des Plaines River, known as Robinson's Forest and Schiller Woods. The trails lay just east of Chicago's O'Hare Airport. That's so funny because there's a book that I'm trying to buy and an author who I've been trying to contact through various ways. He's not a Christian, but I don't mind. Who been researching this so-called Lake Michigan slash Chicago Mothman. Supposedly, there's so many people who witnessed Mothman in the Chicago area airport and the Lake Michigan, well, the whole Lake Michigan area, which is I find it fascinating. I didn't know anything about Bigfoot. He told me I was just planning to have a fun trip. He took his Schwinn varsity, I'm trying to read this brand, 10 speed along a dirt path that led to an asphalt trail along the river's west bank, walking the bike where the path became too rough. Along the way, he decided to stop and rest for a few minutes on a fallen log overlooking the river that flowed dappled with gold from the sunrise behind the woods on the other shore. On the other shore. As Turner sat drinking in the scene's beauty, he began to sense something unusual about the place. A remarkable thing I noticed was that I heard a bird whistle, some type of exotic bird I never heard before, he said. It happened 4 or 5 times. A couple walked by on the trail as I sat there, and the lady said that she heard it too. He decided to move farther along the trail, still walking his bike, and soon came to another good vantage point for watching the sunrise. A patch of 5 foot tall ragweed plants just coming into the pollen season separated him from the bank, he said, but he was still able to see through the fronds. Turner noticed an orange glow from what he assumed was the dawn's light shining through the trees, and then quickly realized the waters harbored something much less tranquil. I was just sitting there imagining how the area must have looked back when the Native Americans would paddle down the river, said Turner, when I saw what first looked like a shadow of a figure. Okay, now it's becoming interesting. It was big and tall with a cone shaped head, but man like. and it was coming out of the woods where I saw the glow. It walked and stood erect, with its head up. Turner added that it was pulling on some vines that hung off the trees as it walked toward the edge of the river's east bank, about 80 feet away. Once it had fully emerged from the wood line, Turner realized this was no shadow. It was a dark furred creature that stood about 6.5 feet tall. Okay, so a little bit taller than me, he said, and Turner stands 6 foot one. Okay. And he estimated its weight at about 300 pounds. It seemed obvious to Turner's presence as it slurped water from its cupped hands and then swirled the shallows of the riverbank with its fingers as if hunting for crayfish or other small edibles. The creature was man-like but covered with jet black hair, about 4 inches long everywhere except for its dark gray, leathery face, said Turner. He estimated that he watched it for about 2 minutes, his mind racing for some rational explanation for the being. Doug, do you want to continue?
Sure. And then, to his horror, he began to feel a tickle behind his tongue from the nearby ragweed. Although he tried mightily to fight down the urge to cough, the ragweed got the best of him, and he had to clear his throat. The creature immediately straightened at the sound and began to look for him, peering across the water in Turner's direction. Afraid the creature would find him, Turner crept with his bike around the ragweed patch to a different vantage point. He could no longer see the creature on the opposite shore, but what happened next made him very glad he had moved. Turner had neither seen nor heard the creature cross the water, but he suddenly spotted it on his side of the river, dripping wet and only about 30 feet away from where he had stood. That meant it had either swum or waded across the river in 5 minutes or less, estimated Turner, with no audible splashing. Luckily, he hadn't yet found his new hiding place. Turner hardly felt comforted by that, however, as he saw the creature pull 4 or 5 large flat stones from the river bottom and toss them one by one right at the spot where Turner had been sitting, where he coughed. Turner watched it hoist one of the slabs over its head and slam the huge missile at his recent position. It had pinpoint accuracy, he said. It was trying to flush me out. Unfortunately for Turner, the ragweed was still close by, and he couldn't stifle another cough. The creature immediately turned where Turner now stood, and the two of them shared a moment of mutual surprise. I looked at him, and he looked at me, said Turner. Even in his shock, he drank in the details of the creature's physique. There were places on his thighs and buttocks where the wet hair had separated to reveal brownish, charcoal-colored skin. Turner wasn't sure what sex the creature was, since it was covered with too much hair to see genitalia. The creature appeared to have no neck. The hair on its head was much longer than on its body, falling to its shoulders like a cape. There's also a spot on its head where the water had slicked its hair back enough so Turner could see an ear. It was big, on the side of its head like ours, except it was a little pointed. Turner added that it looked more muscular than heavy, as he could see its muscles flexing beneath the skin as it moved. Its arms were very long, and it had large hands with black nails. The nails were also long. They were blunt at the ends, and a few of them were broken. Turner knew with a prickle of sick dread that whatever this creature was, it could easily best him in a fight. Well, yeah, it's 300 pounds, is what he thought. 6 foot, 6.5 feet, 300 pounds.
This thing could have maybe even beaten Goliath.
Yeah, well, yes. Okay. Or maybe it's the same type of creature as Goliath was.
Yeah, who knows?
The creature had been checking him out that long moment too, and it suddenly took action. He made a quick bluff charge to Turner. Then he picked up 3 smaller rocks that were lying there in the ground somewhere, and he threw them like fastballs by a baseball pitcher. One hit the rubber tire of his bicycle, and another glanced off Turner's forearm as he tried to shield his head from the assault. Turner began to run back along the trail as fast as he could while pulling his bike, and realized the creature was chasing him. The creature howled twice. The sound reminded Turner of a long, rising moan of an air raid siren. He felt the hairs rise in the back of his head. He was following right on me, and he came right behind me so fast I could hear him make mumbo-jumbo noises like someone talking backwards. He had a language. Turner performed an imitation of the sound, a deep-throated string of syllables that I know I would not want to hear from anything chasing me. Regarding the mumbo jumbo language, we've noted that vocal attribute several times in this book, not just in Bigfoot encounters, but also in relation to upright canines, which I guess is an earlier chapter. At the same time, the Bigfoot was chasing him and making that sound, said Turner. He could hear other similar voices screaming from across the river and assumed there were friends or families of his pursuer. It was like the gates of hell were open, he said. The creature was within an arm's distance behind me while the others were calling to it. Thought it was going to get me, and I thought I was dead, and I said out loud, "Oh, Jesus, help me, help, help." And the minute I said that, it was gone. It was poof, disappeared. I looked across the river.
Wait, can we please comment on this? What do you think just happened? Let's say this is 100% true story. What do you think just happened?
Well, let me just finish the sentence here. I looked across the river and saw a bunch of dark shadows as the group of other creatures, went back into the forest on the east side. So he's saying that this thing disappeared when he called out to the Lord, and the other creature, and he saw other dark shadows that he assumes are the other group of creatures, and they disappeared back into the forest. Well, I mean, so let's just take it at face value. It must be some sort of spiritual creature then. And so he goes on and he says, and we'll read it here in a second, but he says, I'm surprised he didn't catch me. And maybe it was just trying to scare me away. Yeah, or maybe, so you have two things going on. If it's a completely like disembodied spiritual creature, well, then it wouldn't be able to throw the rocks. However, maybe the rocks were an illusion. I'm just talking out loud. I'm not an expert in Bigfoot, right? So I'm just talking out loud here.
No, that's okay. We're just giving biblical, logical, whatever comments. Yeah.
He said it went through the water and it was wet, but he didn't hear anything. So now, granted, this is first-person testimony a couple of decades after the event, but it's been burned in his memory. So we just take it as face value. And that's what I was alluding to when I said, oh, maybe it's the same kind of creature as Goliath was. Goliath was a descendant of the Nephilim, which were from the sons of God, or angelic creatures, watchers, spiritual creatures who somehow took on physical form. And that right there, you have a spiritual creature takes on a physical form. Like you have a spiritual creature. So imagine, I'm going to use a word that's sciencey, but I don't mean it to be sciencey, but just, I don't have a good word for it. So like a dimension that's next to ours, and it's a spiritual dimension. And then a creature steps into ours, like stepping into, and then as this disembodied creature steps into our reality, it like takes on physical shape. And the picture I have is like, I don't know, if you imagine, it's Christmas time when we're recording this kind of, and imagine you have cookie dough, right? Because you're making cookies for Christmas, right? And you just hang the cookie dough, like you're just hanging it like a sheet, all right? Imagine this is cookie dough, just hanging it. And then you push your fingers through and your fingers suddenly take shape, right? That's what I mean. Like this is the spirit realm and this is the physical, and the creature comes through and it takes on physical attributes of this dimension, all right? Maybe it's that. Maybe it's something like that. And that's how it can become embodied. But yet still move, and then still move in a way that is not embodied, like through the water.
Yeah, this story and your explanation perfectly match what I've been talking with different guests on my channel. We also, covering different material, different authors. They all say the same, just like you. We know that there's so much we don't know, but it looks like it's not either or. It's both a spiritual and physical entity. It's primarily a spiritual entity that chooses when and how to manifest in a bodily form. So you can change forms. Maybe we can call it as a shapeshifter. Just because it chose to look like a Bigfoot one day, that doesn't mean like in 10 days from now it may not look differently. Again, we don't know the data. It's a little bit speculation, but that's okay because we enjoy it's mysterious, and we just wanna contribute to the topic as much as we can to the best of our abilities. Doug, how would you behave if you were if you were there in the forest instead of this guy? Would you be yelling, screaming immediately, not even waiting to check what will this creature do? Would you be getting on your bike immediately? Would you be, or you will stay there and command in the name of Jesus to be gone? What would you do?
I would probably do that last thing. I would probably step towards it and say, in the name of Jesus, you have to leave this place, but probably more aggressively than that. I mean, there's been times, I remember when I was a teenager once, and I was just going for a run, and I was chased by some wild dogs, big wild dogs, and I held my ground. I screamed at them, go away, no, and they stopped and they ran away. Now, I'm not saying I'm like a bear. If this was a bear, no, I wouldn't do that. I would run, and bears cannot run humans, so I would be praying, but differently, right? But if I'm assuming this is a spiritual creature, which I think Bigfoot probably is, I don't think, I used to be on this podcast called Paranormal, where we looked at peer-reviewed research of paranormal phenomena, and we did an episode on Bigfoot where there were some alleged hair from that, supposed to have been from a Bigfoot, and the research says no, it really was. It's not a wasn't a mammal. It was, or not. Excuse me. It wasn't a like an ape or an unknown creature. It was probably a bear. The DNA, had degraded some, but the science didn't hold up. That said, at the end of the episode, where most of the people on the episode, most of the panel, were like, "Yeah, I believe in Bigfoot." I mean, there's just countless sightings. If just one of them has to be right, I mean, are they all wrong? Now, funnily enough, I was sort of shocked that that's the view of people have on Bigfoot. I would fall on the other camp, thinking you're mistaken, that you're not seeing a Bigfoot. But I've come a long way since then, maybe, and I'm more open to the idea. There's a couple other things going on here that she mentioned without drawing too much attention to, is that this is an area that has historical roots with Native American culture. There have been bones and artifacts found in this nature preserve, which is just aside from O'Hare along the Des Plaines River. And by the way, that is pronounced correctly for our friends who are listening, maybe from Europe, who speak French. Here in America, we have some towns that we call Des Plaines, even though it was clearly French about 300 or 400 years ago. English took it and they decided to change the name from Des Plaines to Des Plaines, right? And that's true. But before the French got there, this was a Native American area, and eventually the French and then the English later pushed them out. Also, it's one of the most heavily, it's right by O'Hare International Airport, which is one of the most heavily trafficked airport for U.S. military cargo in the United States. Look, correlation doesn't mean causation, but I am aware that Bigfoot sightings often take place near military institutions, and sometimes they correlate with Native American sites also. Now, that's hard to don't want to overstate that. Most of the United States had been a Native American, at some point, but I'm just stating a couple of facts. Doesn't mean there's a correlation, but I do think there may be a correlation with U.S. military and Bigfoot sightings, other strange phenomena. It's not an unusual thing. And, we like to pretend here in the U.S. that, oh yeah, it's all about science and stuff. But there's more to the U.S. military on some levels than just science and weapons warfare. And I'll just remind people that the Watchers, according to the Book of Enoch, the Watchers taught men how to fight warfare better, how to create weapons to kill, to gain power over other humans. And it's probably okay. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. That stuff still goes on, right? We get occult knowledge. We as scientific military people get occult knowledge from spiritual powers to create more powerful weapons, and sometimes technologies that result in hybrid creatures, perhaps strange creatures. Can I prove any of this? Look, we're just talking, man. This is myths, mysteries, and majesty, right? But the fact that this thing disappeared in the name of Jesus, and I don't know if is she a Christian author? The author is.
I'm not familiar. I would cautiously assume she's not.
Yeah.
But if she's putting this as a genuine eyewitness report, I can only applaud her, even if she's not a follower of Jesus, that she didn't omit that part.
A
She
lot of
doesn't have to be a
people,
believer.
a
Yeah.
lot of people in the UFO research community will admit that sort of thing, but it's consistent, and there are connections between Bigfoot and UFO, which we will continue in the chapter here in a bit. And look, if you are encountering these creatures, call on the Lord, because you can't command these things to go away and with your authority, but you can call on the Lord and the Lord will respond, which suggests that there is a spiritual element to these things.
Amen. And you know what's funny? I don't want to spoil it. I didn't read the chapter, but I was skimming through it. I saw there's like a subchapter about UFOs, and you
Oh, well,
just
I
said
don't mean to give
this
spoilers.
connection.
I don't mean to give spoilers, but the
No, it's fine.
in the UFO research community, this again, I'm not an expert. I'm not a ufologist. I just dabble in it. But in the UFO research community, it is known that abductees who call out in the name of Jesus stop the abductions. They do stop abductions. If abductions are maybe not conducted by non-human creatures, maybe they're part of military experiments that are imitating aliens, then it's a different story, right? Humans don't always respond to the name of the Lord, but the spiritual creatures do.
Thank you. I can continue because you talked a lot, so you can, take a break, couple
Okay.
minutes. I'll continue. Yeah, thank you. Turner didn't stop to question his fortunate escape, but continued straight for the parking lot. When he reached it, he said he dropped down on his knees and thanked God for saving him. He felt like he had been in some sort of Hollywood monster movie, he added. Yeah, I would feel the same. I wouldn't know if I had some crazy vision, or if something is messing up with my brain, or if this was true. Usually when a shock happens to you, any type of shock, good or bad, at least in my experience, you need some time to get adjusted to it, to know, like, yeah, that really happened. There was a young girl in the parking lot who was about to head down that same bike path, he said, and he told her not to go, that there was a crazy hairy wild man throwing rocks out there. That sounds funny. She heeded his advice and left.
So
He said, Mhm.
my first impression would be that's probably what he saw, and his mind ran with this, you know, his mind. That's what happens sometimes. Our minds fill in the gaps. So, um, when I first read this, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's exactly right. It was a crazy wild man throwing rocks, and your mind filled in the gaps. And when you called on the Lord, that calmed your mind, and maybe you sort of woke up, and that's why the thing disappeared. That's my rational explanation. That's where I would go.
Yeah, that sounds so psychological. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
it makes sense. But
that's where I
yeah,
would go. And maybe people who think, well, he's whacked out based on what I said earlier, maybe hopefully that makes you feel like I'm not quite as whacked out. But anyway, let's continue.
sounds good. So she heeded his advice and left. He said the same thing to a man standing by a parked truck, but was dismayed that the man seemed less inclined to believe him. Turner didn't argue, he just headed home, horrendous images churning in his mind. The creature's face was most memorable, he said. He described its nose as resembling a pug dog's, or a human nose that has been broken so it was flattened. Its forehead sloped back to a point or a sagittal crest. Its eyes were large, round, and entirely black. And Turner said it appeared the creature was having some trouble seeing him. He was blinking a lot, like the sun bothered his eyes, said Turner. And as he blinked, I could have sworn they were reflecting like mirrors. The eyes weren't completely reflective, as they were still black in color, he added. But as the large pupils moved back and forth, Turner would catch glimpses of a reflective surface within them. The creature then steadied his eyes, said Turner, and began to turn his whole head from side to side in order to get a better look at the intruding human. He noticed another odd thing too, which was that the park seemed to go oddly silent during the encounter. Yeah, whenever there is some evil presence or manifestation, animals are always either silent or they leave that area for a time period.
Or alternatively, maybe
Mhm.
he stepped into an alternate reality. Maybe he turned
Maybe
into
like another dimension or
yeah,
something.
yeah, maybe he stepped into the upside down, and so or something like that from
Mm.
Stranger Things. Um, and that's where the creature was, and he was, and nothing else was. Hey, there you go. Oh, I shouldn't have had to said Stranger Things, but maybe that's what happened. I mean, and throughout medieval Europe, people always people were warned, don't go into the forest because you might disappear. You might go into the quote unquote fairy, which fairy isn't small little pixies. It was horrifying, sort of semi divine beings that lived out there, and you do not want to get caught by them because you'll disappear. And I mean, why do they come up with these stories? It's yeah, because sometimes people wander. I mean, the rational Western person will say, "Well, because people wandered into the woods and they never came out again. They disappeared because these woods are vast compared to our woods today." Okay, sure, fine. Uh, or and there's a supernatural element of things going on in the woods. Maybe this creature was like a supernatural manifestation of a spirit over the creature or over the area, so like maybe that's the spirit, the local quote unquote deity, or the local spirit that is embodied somehow of the wilderness. And so hey, I'm just speculating, man, because
Yeah,
there are
I enjoy it. Don't worry. By the way, I just found out about some other lady author who wrote a series of books, and they're all like, "Stay away from the woods. Don't go in the woods. Something horrible happened in the woods."
yeah.
Every book title has in the woods, or from the woods, but it has that woods part. I'm like, I have to get at least one book to see, and read. I'll dedicate one episode, at least one episode, to her books because she has a whole series and people are buying and reading, and minimum she gets is 4 out of 5 stars. So that's minimum. I'm like, okay, this must be some decent stores. I'm like, eventually I want to get her books too.
I mean, I know seers who see spirits of trees. Okay, I know they see spirits of different nature spirits, and that's going to freak Christians out, maybe who But there's some of these things have spiritual impressions. Okay, and um, don't overread what I said, but they're there. I mean, there's a reason why in the ancient world people went to trees for spiritual encounters. Okay, so, there's a reason why Native Americans thought Bigfoot. Well, they didn't call it Bigfoot, but creatures that look like Bigfoot were territorial spiritual creatures in certain areas. All right. There's also something called Thunderbird, which was a giant winged creature that was also thought to be like a territorial nature spirit.
The Mothman, right? Is
Yeah,
that the same?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's Where's that in the Bible? Well, if you really want to, we can dig into it, but that's not the point. Okay, we're going to stay right here, right now. But I mean, it's all throughout history. It's just sort of it's there. It's throughout history. People have understood this is the case, and humans need to stay in their area and let the the dark spirits have their area, and eventually humans will go conquer and take dominion over it, but you need to do so in a cautious manner.
Yeah, one thing I just want to add that I would just want to add something when you said about trees. See, I didn't know that many ancient civilizations found trees to be sacred or whatnot.
Yep.
But in Eastern Europe, before churches, before any of that sort, uh, the ancient pagans, the Druids, the just my ancestors who did not believe in the Most High God, at least not in the way that we describe. For them, the oak tree was the sacred tree. So sometimes they would meet under the oak trees. It was almost like their little church. It was like
Yep.
their assembly. So I just remember that when you mentioned that the trees were like found to be sacred.
The oak tree, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Abram moved his tent and came and settled by the oaks of Mamre. Abram, and that's in Genesis 14. Abraham. I mean, why did he go there? Why did he go there?
Maybe that was the only tree in that area. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
We
and
can
so
only
if that's the
speculate.
case, why? And so the assumption was, well, the spirit of life must be there. Yahweh must be there, and that because God was the giver of life. But these trees lived a long time, and so I mean, there's just something there. Okay, I don't want to overread it. I don't want to sound like I'm a pantheist, with Native Americans worshiping tree spirits or whatever. But the fact is, there's something there, and we're not supposed to worship them. We're supposed to take dominion, right?
Yeah, we just want to tell the audience, don't go hug trees. That's not the point.
You can hug a tree, just don't worship it. It's not. It's part of the creation, right? We worship the Creator, But just know that what He created was pretty awesome. It's like there's a lot here, and it's just not all rational. A lot of it is spiritual, and it's awesome. I mean, God created a very awesome universe. Like the Earth is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Okay, I have a sentence or two, and then it's your turn.
Okay.
So, like I said, there was no sound from any animal or birds. It was just the creature, the river, and me. Astute readers will recognize another case of the Oz factor. Okay, so now we're coming to the same story, but another section or the subchapter called "Living with Monstrous Memories." So I'll leave that for you, Doug.
Okay, this must have made an impression in him because here's what he says, right? Turner later tried telling a few people about the creature, but was ridiculed by all. He then tried to put it out of his mind for 45 years, but eventually decided he wanted some closure about the experience, even though he never doubted that the experiences had been real. Yeah, you can't deny a supernatural experience. This is what cracks me up. Sidebar. It cracks me up when people say, "Oh, speaking of tongues isn't for today. That died out in the first century." Really? Like hundreds of millions of people are speaking in tongues while they worship God. How can you? And you just can't deny it. Like you just can't. Well, it's from a demon. Like no, like you can't deny a supernatural experience. When Paul got knocked off that horse, he just couldn't deny his experience with Christ. He just couldn't. You can't deny a supernatural experience. You want to. You can try to rationalize it all you want, but you just can't. And this thing stuck with him for. He didn't. He probably tried. He tried. I said, "Oh, it's probably some old man with hair." Yeah, it wasn't an old man. It was a supernatural experience. All right. He probably had nightmares about this thing. Okay, sorry. Supernatural experiences have a way of reshaping your worldview. I work with people who see spirits. They don't want to see spirits. None of them want to see spirits. They can't help it. And it's just like, how do I make sense of the world because I see spirits?
Doug, that reminds me of that old, well, it's not old movie. It came out like 15, 20 years ago, The Sixth Sense, when the boy says, I see ghosts or I see spirits. That's like the same
and they're
thing.
everywhere. I've talked to people who have very similar experiences, but you just can't deny it. You can't deny a supernatural experience. And, I see someone who experienced healing and people, oh, you must have they just psychosomatic and they weren't really, dude, you weren't there. Like I saw the healing. Like I saw it. We can get tests. We got tests. People just will rationally, like their worldview is so set, they'll deny everything, and I
mean, to one point, I also understand skepticism because in some charismatic and apostolic churches, they have fake so many things
Mhm.
to make you want to vomit and avoid those churches because they're nothing close to the sound doctrine. So I understand the skepticism, but you cannot be skeptic about everything. If everyone comes to you and they have a good record of being a solid sound Christian, tell you something, you cannot just always deny because in your church they deny the existence of the spiritual gifts or miracles for today. Then
Yeah.
it's like you're more dogmatic and closed-minded than skeptic. So there should be that healthy balance.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of that Bigfoot episode I did on paranormal where I was in the Scully camp, man. I was like, whatever, this is not real. They're bears, or they're just like the hairy man who's homeless and they're freaking you
Yeah, I
out.
would be the same too. Until like a year or two, I would be the same.
Yeah, yeah. But then man, you just like there's something there. I don't know what it is, but there's something there. And so I'm in that there's something there camp. You just can't deny supernatural experiences. This guy, I don't know. All right.
You're
So
like a Bigfoot/Yeti agnostic. You're not
yeah,
yes, you're not no,
yeah.
you're like
I am
agnostic.
definitely agnostic about it. Like there's something, but okay, it's probably not a bear. All right. So 45 years, he wanted closure. All right. When I retired, I started reflecting on my life, he said. And this came back to my mind. I wasn't drunk or taking drugs. And I know I wouldn't have run from nothing. I mean, I kind of like this idea of maybe he was at some sort of the upside down, where he stepped into some parallel universe and that's where the thing was. And when he called on Jesus, he got transformed back into the reality and the thing left the thing behind.
Man, that's a cool plot for a Christian novel. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody write that. It wouldn't be upside down. It'd be the side by side, right? Okay, there you go. Trademark that, and I expect royalties. He still regrets that he didn't have a camera with him that day. Now I see. All right, I'm not sure a camera would have picked up the creature. Okay, I'm not sure a camera would. And I have lots of people who've sent me pictures of spirits that they see. I don't see anything. I don't see anything there. Other people look at it and go,
Wait, you have people who send
yeah,
you photos of supposed spirits?
yes, oh yeah. And other people who see spiritually, like, yeah, can't you see it? I'm like, no, I don't see anything.
Yeah,
I don't
you're
know, man.
honest.
We are complicated creatures, okay? And like God just
Yeah.
made me blind to the spirit realm. All right.
Yeah, I have some Christian friends, even though there are maybe only a couple, who just when they see weird cloud formation, they're always getting religious. They're always like, oh, God is maybe doing something, showing
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
There's like a spiritual war. I'm like, it's just weird cloud. That for me, that's all.
I
it
know
is.
people who move in the gift of prophecy look for God's narratives in the strangest things. So I'm sympathetic to that because I can do the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. Like you open the fridge, it makes weird noise. You're like,
Yeah,
oh,
oh
there's
my
a
gosh, the
demon.
Lord is moving, and I just maybe I've done things like that too, but I'm sympathetic to it. Yeah, it's just a cloud, like, is it though? All right, he regrets he didn't have a camera. I'm not sure the camera would have picked it up. We have hundreds of millions of these devices running around, and there's very few pictures of Bigfoot. People still see them. You get your phone out, you try to take a picture.
I'm upset also when it comes to like werewolves or anything. There's always like these blurry, dark
Yeah.
images, and we have much better images from the telescope from space. And like, come
Yep.
on, you couldn't take a photo like in your backyard or something. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So in July 2014, Turner took his wife back to visit the site of his experience. Which, by the way, next time I'm up there, maybe we should go to the site of the experience. It's not that far from where you live, or not far from the church.
I accept, and I'm not joking. I'm
Yeah,
up for those mysterious adventures. I
we
don't
should
have
go
enough
there.
positively crazy people like that in my church that would like to do these things.
They probably would. We could
So,
take a tour, and then
yes, we can
you know,
get a few brave men and women and just go. And if we never do the podcast again, hey, we live some good
well, we
lives.
will
And
record it for YouTube posterity.
we can maybe go
It'll be
live.
like what was that movie, the horror movie where it was all from the first person? The
Oh, the Blair Witch. The
Yeah.
Blair Witch. Yeah.
It'll be like that, and the people will be like, they'll go out and they'll just find a bunch of phones because we all got sucked into the side by side. Man, that's good. There you go, man. We had Brian Godawa on it, didn't you? Brian, you need to write that movie. All right,
Great.
let's continue
Sounds
here.
good.
Let's see. All right, so Turner and his wife, they poked around the area and discovered a sort of hut made out of logs stacked, upended around a tree. It was tall enough that Turner could stand up inside, and he said, and the place smelled rank and musty, like an old carpet you put outside after a dog has lain on it for a long time. Ugh. It could have been a Bigfoot hunting blind, but this is a public park, so it's likely that it's human made. I visited the hut and or the area and the hut with Turner in 2015, and while the structure was impressive, the walls were obviously constructed by humans. An empty beer can lay crumbled near the entrance. Still, as I noted earlier in the section about such structures, that doesn't mean it couldn't also have been used by a Bigfoot when partying teenagers aren't around. It seems likely that any Bigfoots inhabiting the preserve when Turner was a young man have probably long since left the area. But here, where are they going to go? Because even then, I don't know that this is actually true. I don't know how far the suburbs were out in the 70s. So, maybe they could escape as the urban sprawl came out. I don't really know, but low flying. Oops, sorry, my Siri is trying to answer something here. Okay. Low flying jets zoom. It's always listening, guys. The government is always listening. Apple and Google, Amazon. Okay, sorry. Low flying jets zoom overhead continually, and the preserve is filled with running, hiking humans on weekends, which is true. When I first read this story, I'm thinking, really? I mean, that place is packed. Okay. Still, I saw 2 deer and found a trackway of definite wolf prints during my visit, showing that other types of wildlife still find the preserve habitable. The forest preserve has a backstory too. Turner had chosen that particular park for a ride on his new bicycle that day in 1967 because he was interested in a local historical figure, Alexander Robinson. Robinson, an early settler and chieftain who is part Scottish, part Ottawa, was awarded land in what is now the nearby Checha Pinquay Forest Preserve or Robinson Woods. That's what Americans do. We take things we can't pronounce and we just rename them. The Checha Pinquay or Robinson Woods. For his help with treaty negotiations between the U.S. government and several different tribes. He was buried in a small cemetery that, along with most of his forest preserve, has long been believed to be haunted. Huh. I didn't know that. Turner said that he heard of sightings of mysterious lights accompanied by eerie sounds in the vicinity of that cemetery. Well, that's not unusual. I mean, that happens a lot. There are rumors of deer that shapeshifted, he added, and people said they could smell lilacs in winter there. Well, the side-by-side, lilacs are always there. I'm being silly.
Yeah, okay. I can continue because
Okay.
you read the whole chapter,
Yeah.
so this is not my part. Okay. UFOs over Chicago. More to the immediate point, this forest preserve area lies just east of O'Hare International Airport, the site of a famous UFO sighting on November 7, 2006. Are you familiar with this supposedly famous UFO sighting, 2006?
Not particular. No. 2000. Okay. Nope.
So it's famous, but we didn't hear about it. Sounds good.
I had lived up there up to 2002, and then we had moved downstate. I mean, maybe I'd heard about it, but...
Okay. There were at least 12 witnesses to a daylight flyover of a metallic gray disc, and the group included United Airways staff and pilots. The craft hung in the sky over gate C-17. I should remember never to go to this gate for several tantalizing minutes at about 4:15 p.m. Wow, this was like in the daylight. Before zipping up into a cloud layer at such a great speed that it left a round hole revealing clear blue sky beyond, exactly like other reports of aerial portals. I just want to say to people who want to learn more about UFOs from religious Christian perspective, check out my episode I did with a few months ago with Dr. Hugh Ross. He dissects all of these things and just explains that these are interdimensional beings, but they're not aliens from other planets. Okay. The hole then shrank back to full cloud cover. The event garnered headlines nationwide, and it is still a popular search item on the internet. Of course, that event occurred almost 40 years after Turner's experience, so I checked to see if there were any sightings recorded at a date closer to his sightings. To my own surprise, I did find another report of a Chicago area UFO in the summer of 1967. It occurred at dusk on either July 12th or August 12th, depending on the reporting organization consulting, the National UFO Reporter Center or the Mutual UFO Network. The location was Edison Park, which lies only 2 or 3 miles northeast of the Forest Preserve, where Turner saw the large creature and the screaming shadow figures. According to these accounts, two 15-year-old young men witnessed a 12 to 14-foot dull white triangle slowly traversing the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad tracks at about 60 feet, directly above the power lines and heading northwest. They had just exited a house on Northwestern Highway where one of the boys lived when they were greeted by the amazing sight that was fully visible from the home's backyard. The silent craft soon glided away as it continued its northwest trajectory above the tracks and power line. The boys thought about telling their family members still gathered indoors, but decided no one would believe them. Like Turner, they kept the incident to themselves for over 40 years until 2007. Man, I would go insane to be silent for 40 years. When one of them decided to report it to the two major UFO tracking groups noted above. If the August date was correct, it might even have been the same week Turner took his fateful bike ride. At any rate, the UFO sighting was close enough to Turner's encounter in both date and location to be noteworthy. Whether or not the UFO and the Bigfoot were truly related, of course, cannot be proved. And I should add that Turner was very surprised to learn of that UFO. Okay, Doug, this is your section.
All right, the wall of silence. By the way, about UFOs, did you know there are U.S. patents that have been filed for triangular craft that can move, that can like alter like gravity around it, so it can make super fast movements? Now, scientists have argued that those patents are ridiculous, but they have been filed and through the U.S. Navy, and so there's questions like why would the Navy do that whenever other physicists say you can't replicate what you're saying, that's ridiculous what you're arguing or what you're presenting. I just bring that up because interdimensional beings, sure, military craft, very likely. Planets from creatures from another planet, no. Like there's something there, probably not aliens from another planet. Something. The wall of silence, of course, the fact that there was a UFO sighting at nearly the same time and in the same vicinity as Turner's experience doesn't prove or disprove anything about the creature's level of reality either. But while Bigfoot behaved in a way completely appropriate to the physical world as it explored and utilized the park's environment, there were a few other parts of this sighting that fall closer to the side of high strangeness. One was a remark Turner made about the uncanny silence in his surroundings during the encounter, hearing only the creature, the river, and himself. This wall of silence, often described by witnesses of unknown creatures, UFO encounters, and various paranormal situations, is akin to the zone of fear, or Oz factor phenomena discussed earlier in the book. The biggest question in that regard is why a close encounter with Bigfoot, especially if it is just an undiscovered, fully natural animal, or even a close human relative, would induce such a profound silence. Well, we've already discussed possible psychological conditions, such as derealization, that resemble the Oz factor, but simply knowing that this phenomenon of silence can be induced doesn't explain why it happens during encounters with Bigfoot. Tom Burnett and Rob Riggs have yet another name for the phenomena. They call it the eerie silence in a book called Bigfoot, Exploring the Myth and Discovering the Truth, and also connected to a Bigfoot, lights, and UFOs. And they write, this is a quote from that book, not only are there long-term established histories of Bigfoot-type creature sightings near the Big Thicket in Texas and Brown Mountain ghost light locations, but a brief survey of the available literature will show that the Yakima Indian Reservation lights in Washington, the Gonzales Light in Louisiana, the Gordon Light in Arkansas, and the Hornet Spook Light location in Missouri, to name a few, also have histories of numerous repeated sightings of mysterious, hairy primates nearby to where the lights recur. End quote. Burnett and Riggs have proposed that these cases may have something to do with the interactions between the magnetic fields of humans and the magnetic fields of the natural landscape, and perhaps unknown forces or intelligences. Again, that's the suggestion of a quantum collaboration. So let me pause on that. I think she's referring to something earlier in the book talking about quantum collaborations, and I would just completely dispute that. Like, just because it's scientific and weird doesn't mean it's quantum. Okay. Quantum is well known. Quantum mechanics, quantum physics is well known and is completely unrelated to weird things happening in the physical world now. We did again on paranormal, we did a 3-part episode where we had a quantum physicist who's also a charismatic Christian, who led a supernatural ministry school. He travels the world doing conferences and speaking, but he's a physicist, and he's like, no, there's no correlation between the spiritual and quantum mechanics. And he explained why. It took him 3 episodes. A lot of it was over my head, but I just like, it might be science and it might be weird, but it is not quantum. So let's just get that out. Okay. Back to the book. They have done experiments that showed compasses will often malfunction near known sightings of Bigfoots and mysterious lights, and believe this may be a significant key to the mystery. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I have also know that people who are highly sort of spiritual with supernatural encounters, people who see spirits, often will drain batteries of cell phones, of other things. Like the batteries just get drained, right? Because there's something in their aura, something in their spirit that is impacting this physical around them, and the electronics go haywire sometimes. And it's known that whenever there's a haunting or there's a spiritual encounter in home, sometimes things go haywire with electronics. I've seen that. I've experienced it, but it's just not in my own personal experiences. It's just kind of well known. I have an article in the book. I have an article on my website, and I mentioned it briefly in the coming book, but don't go into it. I don't know why. I don't know why. Okay, that people who are highly gifted in spiritual things drain cell phone batteries. I used to get so mad at my daughter because she would just drain her cell phone battery like crazy. I'm like, stop using your cell phone so much. She's, I'm not. And like, well, it turns out she's just very spiritual. So I don't know why. Can't explain it. It's mysterious, right? It goes along with myths, mysteries, and majesty.
So if I need half a day or almost a whole day to spend my battery, that means I'm not spiritual.
I don't know. I'm not saying that, right? Like,
I have to be concerned.
I'm making some observations. I can't make conclusions from the observations. It's strange. It's strange. Modern cell phones are a little bit better than the ones 10 years ago. I will say that. But I had a friend who was a seer who used to be in the U.S. military, and she was like, I can't remember where she worked exactly, but it was just difficult for military grade batteries to just degrade around her, and she couldn't help it. It was just like, put her somewhere else. Right. Okay. And by the way, understand that the military, like, and I'm not saying all levels of the military, but this stuff is known. Like, the military researches this sort of thing because they want to look for leverage against their enemies. Right. Okay.
This sounds like an X-Files episode. I love
all
it.
These do. Everything we're talking about is the X-Files have explored a lot of these things. All right. It's for sure. Okay. This is a quote from their book again. When the eerie silence dawns, it may be like the dead canary in a coal mine and serve as a warning that the creatures are nearby. Remember in Stranger Things, whenever like the lights start flickering and like, oh, well, someone is here. And
yeah.
It's okay. It's similar to that. Okay. All right. The creatures are nearby, employing their mental projections of magnetic energy. And by the way, I'm not saying Stranger Things is accurate, but it is playing around with these same concepts. All right. That are very hard to understand. Whatever causes cars to stall and their electric systems to black out when Bigfoots are around might also short circuit nervous systems or induce dormancy and helplessness in their intended prey in the wild. That makes sense to me. I mean, that makes sense. When human beings are subjected to this weird effect, it has mystifying and sometimes terrifying results. Yeah, for sure. End quote. All right. Back to Linda. So this is Linda continuing on. This, of course, brings to mind the incidents explored earlier here where green mists and spook lights have shut down electrical systems in cars. As Riggs explained in his earlier book, In the Big Thicket, on the Trail of the Wild Man, Quote, we have seen that the wild man creature sightings are associated with the mysterious energies that sometimes manifest as light forms. These lights, which recur in the same locations for generations in the form of the ghost light phenomenon, also have a peculiar relation to the consciousness of the observer. We have speculated that these energies may be evidence of a form of non-localized consciousness, and that, as such, constitute a sort of field of psychic energy that may be as much a part of our natural environment as the air we breathe. End quote. Wow. So, all right, dissect that for me. What did he just say? What does that mean?
Yeah, he just confirmed what you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, if I would be late at night in a forest and seeing that weird fog, I would be freaking out. Like where, like if let's say you don't have a car, you're just, I don't know, camping, visiting someone, you got lost, whatever, and you see like as if it's not enough that you need time to get out of the forest, it's getting dark, and now you see this green fog. I mean, that's already getting like you like in the atmosphere of those good horror movies.
Yeah.
uh, I'll be a little bit concerned, to be honest. I'll be starting singing hymns to God, praying. I'm like, okay, God, just, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I probably would do the same thing. Worship is powerful warfare, man. You don't have to necessarily pray against something. You start worshiping Jesus, and it is powerful warfare. In the middle of the woods, when you're being surrounded by werewolves, maybe don't look for the silver bullet. Maybe start worshiping. Look for the harp.
And that's a amazing slogan on a T-shirt.
I know. I'm just thinking about that. Yes, it's yeah. These things are weird, and you don't have to understand it to know that God is weirder, and I mean he can take it out, right? So worshiping also brings peace to you, and it brings peace to the environment, both spiritual and physical. I mean, have you ever noticed sometimes you go to someone's house and it just has a creepy energy in it, like an angry energy, and as soon as you leave, it's like, man, I feel better. Maybe you don't consciously notice it, but like sometimes maybe you'll get invited somewhere like, I really want to go over there. I don't know why. You can't put two and two together, but your spirit's like, no, I'm not going there. But other places you're like, oh, I definitely am going there because there's something nice about the spirit
Yeah,
realm there,
yeah, it's more welcoming and whatever. But also, I went once to this friend's house. We were like several guys, and I was in another room, and I was like, "Where's everyone?" I went to another room. They're watching porn on
Oh,
computer, isolated from me because they knew I was a Christian. And when I went there, they told me the computer, that porn video just froze when I entered the room,
yeah.
and I didn't even know. I was just looking for that. I never forgot. This happened like maybe 20 years ago, but to this moment, I will never forget that. Or like not completely the same. It's not about electronics, but once we were coming out from a park, my friend and I, good friend, and even then, so I was a Christian, he was not. I was a new Christian, and he was cussing God, which is very common, unfortunately, in my country. It's almost comes like, "Hi, how are you?" It's like it's a common thing, don't ask me to explain. So as we were exiting the park, and he cussed God, soon after that, like there was like a bird flying over our heads and pooped on his. It was either shoulder or head, not mine. It couldn't be me,
Yeah.
but it did on him. I thought the timing was perfect, and it was so funny.
When I was in college, I did not drink alcohol, and it was a matter of conviction for me. And my friends knew it. I was the designated driver. They just knew I didn't drink. Okay, and I was at a party, and my roommate, who was it was a big party, everyone's drinking except for me and this girl I was with. This guy came over and said, "Here, Doug, have a drink. Have a drink." Why does it matter? Okay, like if you don't drink, why do people want to force you to drink? I've never understood that. Okay, it's all right. It's all right. I'm like, it's fine. I'm not saying it's a sin. I'm just saying it's just like that's my conviction. I'm not doing it. Okay, and he was like, "Come here." I'm like, and I finally was like, okay, fine, whatever, just to make him go away. I was going to have a drink, and I reached for it, and that cup went flying out of his hand and hit the wall. Right? I mean, Like, dude, and I looked at it, and he looked at me. His eyes got real big. Oh God, I'm sorry. I'll never tempt you again. And I'm so sorry. God, forgive me. Doug, forgive me. And I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. I'm like, I don't know what to do with that. You can't deny supernatural experiences. All right. You want to say his muscle reflexed and it went flying? No, we were there. We had 3 witnesses. It went flying against the wall. Was it my telekinetic powers? I don't know, man. It was weird, and it confirmed my conviction. And he never asked me again.
Hey, if it's weird, it's important, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And it was strange. It was neat. Okay. Where were we? Oh, Sasquatch. Let's continue. Riggs also posited that the Sasquatch, which I guess is another word for Bigfoot, might be so much more aware of and able to utilize these energy fields. This reminds me a little bit of like angelic powers. Like, how can the sons of God or the Watchers step into our reality, take on physical form, procreate with women, do other apparently horrible things, and then step out and back into the spiritual? How? And I've seen so much speculation of like angel DNA and all this stuff. I'm like, dude, you're
Or portals.
yeah,
That's one of my
yeah.
favorite. I don't think they exist, but I'm like, how can I know? I don't know. People may say, oh, the Jacob's ladders, for example, or the thresholds in the Old Testament, these are like portals. I'm like, that's your understanding of the Bible. I don't see that, but I mean, I don't know.
There's some strange stuff there, right? For like doors that open. I mean, they used to think these portals, or I would call it a doorway to heaven or a stairway to heaven, were on mountains. This is why people went to certain mountains like Bethel. They thought one was there at Bethel, and they thought one was on Zion, right? They went to the Hermon, another one. That's where the prophets went to go listen to God, because they thought that's where God's door was, right? Weird, huh? Portals. Yeah. Well, anyway, so where are we at? Oh, yeah. So maybe the Sasquatch might be, maybe they can, all right, they can use advanced. So they looks like, let me start over. That they possess what looks like to us advanced psychic abilities, including the power to influence human minds telepathically or make themselves appear to vanish. He cites a study by Ann Slate and Alan Berry discussed in their 1976 book Bigfoot, in which they come to the conclusion that, according to a number of cases they examined from around the United States, quote, there were times when it almost seemed as if the creatures could make themselves invisible and disappear in a split second. It wasn't a thought that any of the men warmed to or liked to discuss, yet inexorably it would surface. Were there spiritual or other unknown forces at play? I mean, people just, end quote, people just dance around that. It reacts to the name of Jesus. Could it be spiritual? I don't know. Let's not talk about it. Yeah, or because once you ask that question, then you kind of have to submit. Otherwise, you're just going to keep yourself exposed. This is what my book, Peace in Your House, is about. Once you understand that there is a spiritual hierarchy, and the spiritual and the physical are very close, like not upside down, but side by side, like very close, very close. And that sin has physical consequences. The presence of angels or demons have physical consequences. The presence of God has physical consequences. And physical consequences, physical things can impact the spiritual. It's weird. So why not? Why, that's interesting to me. That Bigfoot book in 1976, that sounds, I'd like to maybe look at that. That's really interesting. That, and how does that correlate well with what we read in the Bible of creatures moving in and out of the physical? And like, when Jesus walked through walls, people want to say, well, that's quantum physics. It's not quantum physics. Stop with the quantum physics. But it might be something like this, where this is after the resurrection, right? Whenever he was more than human, maybe but he didn't fall through the floor, on the upper room. He just walked through the wall. He didn't fall through the floor. So like he just chose which matter he could go through. It's
okay. Yeah, and I think sometimes Christians who don't believe in these things, they may say, well, that's Jesus. Okay, these are demonic creatures. And I will say, well, yeah, correct. Jesus is all powerful, almighty, true. But just read the Old Testament. It's not just the good guys who could have done supernatural stuff.
Yeah.
It was also the demonic powers, right? I mean, how can when Daniel in chapter 10 asked for God to send help, how can the archangel and his army be delayed for a couple of weeks? I mean, because the forces are evil. They're not just demons. You have all these big guns, if I can put it, like all these principalities. Like, they're powerful. They can also manifest in bodily form. They also have people who are under them as acting as their earthly army, but they also have spiritual army. They're like different kinds of them and species, and like all of this is much more majestic and much more complex, and we know only only a little bit. And I think while we should be guarded and in a healthy way, you know, be suspicious, we also need to be humble and understand how much we don't know, and there is much more that we don't know than we do know. So
That's right. Yep. There's much more we don't know. Think about this. So in the book of Luke, today we're recording this the beginning of Advent, right? So when the angel appeared to Zechariah is in the temple doing his thing, and the angel appears there. And then later, Luke says that he comes out, right? Zechariah can't speak. He comes out and he's making signs that an angel appeared to him, and it says they discerned, or they figured he had a vision. Okay, he had a vision. Was the angel corporeally there? Like, could he touch the angel? Like, something is impacting the physical world because his eyes are picking up on it. But they said he had a vision. He didn't say he had a visitation. He saw something. All right. Once we mentioned Daniel. Once when Daniel saw an angel, there were other people around him who didn't see the angel. They all sort of passed out from the power of whatever was there, but they didn't see it. He saw it. And then in Matthew, when the angel appears to Joseph, he appears to him in a dream. He appears to the wise men in a dream. And he appears to Joseph in like several dreams, actually, the angels do. So that's different, right? Well, was Zechariah having a waking dream? You know, did he like when he stepped into the room for the incense thing? Was he stepping into the side by side and the angel was there all along? And then when he stepped out, the angel was gone? I don't know, man. I'm just speculating. It's just like we're looking for patterns, right? When Daniel met the angel on the road, did he accidentally not accidentally, was he drawn into the side by side to see the angel? The angel was there, but the other people weren't. You know what I mean? And then when the vision was over, he stepped back into the regular reality. But I like this side by side metaphor, man. I'm gonna start using it.
Yeah, you know what? I think, unless I'm wrong, and it could be, but I think the whole Bible from beginning until the end says whenever there's like this supernatural presence or a vision, different prophets and apostles, when they were said they saw this angelic figure standing. I know this can be just a form of speech, but like if it's in a spirit form, in a ghostly form, why is that entity not levitating? Why is it standing? So could it be that this entity is taking physical form to communicate with people and then going back to their own realm, which is spiritual realm? So if the good guys are doing that, like I said, there's no reason for us to think that the fallen ones, who are gods, the small Elohim, they're again way more powerful than just your local demons that possess people. Why are we assuming that these entities cannot do the same? They can. So yeah, very interesting.
I think in Jeremiah 1, when Yahweh the angel appears, I can't remember how he says it, but I think he reaches out with his hand. The word of the Lord appears, right? The word of Yahweh, right? So that's the visible form of Yahweh. He appears, but it's not a vision because he reaches out and touches him. So he's physically there. Like, but we're getting too sciencey, right? Like if you can see it, is it physically there? Because light waves are hitting it, right? It's too sciencey. Maybe it's just stepping into the side by side. And all right, sorry.
Okay, my turn.
Okay, and then the invisibility question. That's your section.
Yes, the invisibility question. Getting back to Turner's experience in Chicago, the fact that the creatures seemed to vanish as soon as Turner called for help also adds an otherworldly aspect to this Bigfoot encounter. After all, Turner heard no splashing sound as it ran into the river, no sound of heavy footfalls running back to the other way. Turner emphasized the creature's undetected exit as he added during his first phone interview. It just disappeared in an instant. Wow. 1 minute, the 19-year-old was within a long arm's length of a huge muscular creature, and the next, there was nothing behind him except the path, trees, and river. The creature's hobble gobble vocal utterances suddenly ceased, as did the screaming from the shadows across the river. Scene ended. Was the creature able to dive into the forest, undergrowth, or water in total silence, or did it perhaps possess the ability to simply stop appearing in our world, whether by entering a portal to elsewhere telepathically, quote unquote, cloaking itself so as to seem invisible, or by other unknown means such as Riggs and Burnett's theory of natural manipulation or existing electromagnetic fields? That's a good question. I think that just this question can fit in someone's thesis and research paper, and this will be a phenomenal paper. Um, Claims that Bigfoots can disappear or turn transparent, as in the Roachfield, Indiana case discussed earlier, do crop up regularly among sightings reports. These reports range from discoveries of footprints in snow or mud that suddenly end as if the creature had vanished, to eyewitness accounts of seeing a Sasquatch seem to melt into the air. I just have to say, guys, if you like this episode, watch the one 2 weeks from 2 weeks ago. There's so many similarities in stories we read 2 weeks ago and today, especially when it comes to this physical slash spiritual realm appearances, disappearances. Janet and Colin Board recorded a classic account of the latter phenomena in Alien Animals from a Uniontown, Pennsylvania woman who went outdoors with a shotgun one evening after hearing a suspicious noise on her front porch. When that's a brave woman, I just have to say. When she flung open the door, there, lit by the porch light and only 6 feet away, stood a 7 foot tall, Bigfoot like creature with its arms raised as if in attack mode. The woman instinctively aimed at its torso and shot at it point blank range, an act that had little to no effect. I'm not surprised. But amazingly, the BHM, which is the board's abbreviation for Big Hairy Monster, BHM, just disappeared in a flash of light, said the boards. The woman's son in law saw several of the creatures later that night, clustered at the tree line of a neighboring woods, and described their very long arms and red eye shine, traits commonly reported by Bigfoot witnesses. He also saw an unexplained red light lurking just above the tree canopy. Wow. Which is again very reminiscent of the episode in Rochdale. Turner did not notice any flashes of light as he fled along the path just east of O'Hare Airport. I asked Turner what he thought really happened to the creature chasing him, and he replied, I think he stopped short of catching me because I was getting closer to the parking lot where people gather. I suspect he made a dash into the brush to join the others who were berating him. Most people would consider that the likeliest scenario. Of course, Turner hadn't turned around to see where the creature actually went. He was too busy running for his life. Yeah, I would do the same. I can't blame him that he doesn't have any evidence of that. So,
Yeah, I wonder if the thing, um, the, I, I wonder. So these things only tend to appear to individuals, right? One or maybe two people. They don't appear in crowds. I wonder if community keeps them away. Human community.
and it's always about nature.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't hear about like Bigfoot, werewolves, like in a city, or rarely. It's always like mountains, forests, lakes, caves. It's always something like where it's simultaneously beautiful, but it's so vast, it's scary. Like as if we don't have enough mountain lions, wolves, bears. Now we need something demonic or otherworldly. Like so many people disappear in these national parks. Many times these eyewitness reports come not from crazy people, not just from people who want attention or have their own podcast, whatnot. They come from the park rangers. So you have to believe you don't have to, but I would believe them. I don't even care if they're Christians or not, religious or not. I don't care. If this is their job and they know their forest, I mean, they're this close to lose their career or their reputation if they just talk nonsense. And many park rangers report of crazy things or people disappearing, and they never find even corpses. Could it be that animals kill them? Absolutely. Could it be that sometimes it could be maybe some, I don't know, serial killer or some cults or some crazy people, or like we see in the movies like Hills Have Eyes, like some savage people living somewhere? Possible, maybe. But like, is that always? Sometimes there are traces of, not traces, sometimes there are cases of people simply disappearing and there are no footsteps around. There's no there's no blood, there's no flashlight, no phone, nothing. It's just like it's like someone or something came and took them and they vanished. There's like nothing left. You can't see any footprints around. Like, there's no explanation for all of these stories. For some there could be. So this is why I'm not as skeptical as I used to be before. You just listen open minded, and you're just like, I don't know.
It might be Vashta Narada. Come on, can I get a shout out from the Doctor Who fans? Vashta Narada. There's a Doctor Who episode years ago where he said, "Oh yeah, man, these creatures that live in the shadows, and then they consume things, the flesh, super fast." Great episode, man. Go watch it. It's also a metaphor for salvation called Silence in the Library. So I looked it up real fast. I couldn't remember how to pronounce the monster, But they say, well, yeah, these things live in the forest because that's why people disappear and you never see them again. Maybe you find some bones. Vashta Narada. That's a great name. Doctor Who had great names. You didn't watch Doctor Who. You need to watch. That's good. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I mean, it's like the border between human civilization and the wild or wilderness or chaos. Where these monsters live, or these monsters clash with humans. When humans are invading an area to tame the chaos, there is the resistance. Right? That's why the wilderness was scary. You didn't want to go in the wilderness. That's where you sent the scapegoat, right?
Yeah, I was just about to say it's like Old Testament's like wilderness. There's I remember from a Genesis class, there's a word in the beginning chapters of Genesis. Well, in the first, how the earth was desolated and wilderness. There's the same word in Hebrew used in Jeremiah, which that doesn't mean there was nothing. It just means it wasn't habitable because it was just nothing, just the desert. Like, there's no life. That doesn't mean there's nothing. You can see there's earth, there's ground, stones, but there's no
untamed
for life. Yes.
Tenin, I think. Tenin, sort of chaos. It's like chaos creature, right? It's one of the chaos monsters, and I don't remember. I didn't prepare for
I would say Toku and Bohu.
Yeah. Yes. Void and without form. Yeah. Void and without form. It's just chaos. It's something there. There's something there.
Yes.
But it's just and
you don't want to go there, especially in the nighttime, because of Azazel, because of the
Ashton Narada.
Yeah, because of what was the? Oh my gosh, we did a big chunk of this screeching owl feminine demon in the Old Testament.
Oh yeah, the screeching owl. That was.
I know my brain froze too, but like with Azazel and this,
screaming it right now. How do you not know? It's
I know, right?
It's Lilith.
Yeah, yes, Lilith. So like in the wilderness, these things reside, but it's not just in Israel. Like, who says that these demonic creatures, there's only a couple of them and they're only in Israel? Like,
isn't that what it sounded like?
Earth is huge.
Screeching, the screeching, like screeching owl is one of the interpretations, but it's supposed to be the wind, right? The wind is howling, and that was supposed to be scary. That's what modern materialist scholars say. Oh yeah, that's what it came from. It came from the wind, and the wind howls, and it's scary. Is it though? Or maybe it's these Bigfoot creatures out in the woods screaming at us. I don't know, man. It's just, there's a lot to it, right?
Okay, I think this is your turn.
Yeah, where did we leave off?
Why no attacks? page
Oh,
216.
yeah. Why no attacks? Okay, let me scroll down here. It's natural to ask why the Bigfoot didn't pounce on Turner in a few big bounds. After all, the unencumbered creature should have been able to catch Turner, who was dragging a bicycle along the path for almost half a mile as he fled. But it's common for witnesses who report being chased or followed by upright, hairy creatures to feel as although the creature didn't get them, it easily could have. In Turner's case, it seemed to me as if the chase, it seems to me, meaning the author, as if the chase was actually a long, territorial bluff charge intended to scare Turner away, especially given the strange language-like sounds it made as it ran. Territorial creature, a creature that is semi-spiritual.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a comment on that. I had this missionary pastor to Cambodia. He's an American. He was on my podcast like a month ago. He told me this because he knows about Heiser, but he has experienced these things firsthand in Cambodia. There's like a lot of spiritual work because he has to deal with this different demonic beliefs, territorial beings, and stuff of that sort. And he told me, hey, these fallen gods, they're territorial just like animals. So if when you invade as a Christian, when you invade their territory, they will fight back. And now we're just reading about this creature that, at least for this time being, took a form of a Bigfoot and is territorial, just wanted to chase away. Once when he chased away the guy on a bike, and once when the civilization was about to come and other people, it just stopped and disappeared.
Yep. Much of what happened in Turner's encounter, in fact, is common in Bigfoot reports and also squares perfectly with our known laws of physics. Unusual bird calls, as in screeching owl, for instance, like the exotic sounding tweets Turner described in the beginning of his experience, are believed by many researchers to mean there are Sasquatch in the area. Really? I wonder, I would love to talk to him more, this Turner figure, and ask about his spiritual life and ask about his sexual life and like ask about his sin in his life and like just get deeper, because there are correlations, I think, to some of these things. Okay. Most researchers presume they are made by the creatures as signals between one another, perhaps to warn that the humans are near. Turner's scary near pelting with rocks is another very common feature of many Bigfoot encounters. His observation that the creature was able to peg large stones with great finesse is well attested in the annals of Bigfoot lore. Turner's description of the Bigfoot both pitching rocks overhand and by thrusting them above his head with both hands strikes me as a very realistic detail. It makes his story unique, since in most instances of rock pelting, people don't actually see the rocks being thrown. I agree, having witnessed this phenomenon firsthand in 2015. I agree, having witnessed this phenomenon firsthand in 2015 while on a Wisconsin trail where Bigfoot activity had been reported. A colleague was in the process of shaking a small tree in an effort to stir up activity when a rock hit him on the side of the head. Wow. I was looking in the general direction the missile had come from, but saw no trace of the perpetrator. And it was unlikely a human could have made that accurate throw from the brambly underbrush without me seeing him or her. The rock wasn't large, but hit my colleague hard enough that he received a mild concussion. Widespread similar. Does that remind you of a certain other giant who got hit by a rock that killed him?
I've been thinking about that, but I didn't want to say. But actually, because it was your turn when we just began the episode, it was in one of your turns when you read about 3 rocks and being thrown. I was like, man, like this reminds me so much of the David and Goliath, but in the opposite way.
Right?
Yeah.
Which kind of makes me wonder if the story told in the Bible was a polemic to a known issue in that era that we have lost through time, where it was a known issue that giants came with the rocks, with their powerful arms, throwing these rocks and killing people. And then like the Hebrews who first heard the story of David, oh, God turned it upside down and got him with the rock, Look, that's just me. There's no evidence of that, okay? I'm just saying, I wonder.
But you're making an intellectual assumption or hypothesis, because we know that sections of the Old Testament were written as polemics to
Yep.
the pagan narratives. So that's not problematic. It's just pointing the truth to Yahweh instead of pagan gods. So
That's
yeah,
what
there's
something he
no.
would do, something God would do. Like this is something David would do. They know what's up. Okay, all right. I mean, there was a lot of weird tribes running around in Canaan at that time period. I mean,
And a lot of the occult stuff, yeah,
yeah, there was a lot of strange
that's
stuff
super
going on.
connected. Yeah,
This is why the conquest narratives happen. These aren't just regular humans. All right, there's some strange, weird tribes, really strange names, running around, and we just get a glimpse of it. We just get a glimpse through the text. But people in that era, they knew what was up. They're scared of these things. Okay, all right. So where were we? Widespread similar reports have led to the suggestion by some that perhaps forest rock showers are the result of poltergeist activity rather than the act of a super athletic primate. But I think Turner's encounter shows that Bigfoots can and do throw rocks at people. It still doesn't tell us why they do it, but I'd suggest that the creature very much wanted Turner to leave its domain. I love it again with the territorial spirit.
I think it's just Bigfoot Olympics. They're just
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't buy the poltergeist thing. Poltergeist, there's research to suggest poltergeist activity is actually telekinetic things happening from children. Actually,
I think this Bigfoot creatures, they're just competing who can hit a human person, harder and more precise. They're, writing points. They're competing. Maybe they even have apps for this
yeah,
competition.
yeah,
Maybe,
right, yeah,
maybe,
absolutely.
maybe it's nothing personal. Maybe they just want to maybe they're just hunting us for fun. They don't need us. I don't know. Okay, my turn.
Yes.
Winking and blinking. Turner's description of the creature also sounds like that of a physically present natural animal. It certainly required a great deal of strength to hoist those flat rocks over its head and sail them at the spot where it thought Turner was sitting. The animal's appearance also hewed very closely to those reported in the thousands of Bigfoot sightings recorded around North America over the past 50 or 60 years, adding surprising but realistic details such as the color of the skin, where the hair lay parted after the creature's swim, and the glimpse Turner had of one ear. Its noticeable blinking and squinting, along with what seemed like transparent mirror reflecting from its eyes, was something I hadn't heard before. However, it makes sense though that if this creature was usually nocturnal, then it might have trouble seeing well in bright morning light. Yeah, these creatures are always night creatures. Or perhaps it was simply farsighted. Yeah, maybe it needs glasses like I. The mirror reflective eyeballs are not so easy to explain, but I do have a theory based on other witness sightings and on a recent observation of my own. Many reports of nighttime encounters with Bigfoot have insisted that the creature's eyes glowed red. Yeah, maybe it's infrared, right? Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. Often comparing them to the LED lights or lasers. That shouldn't happen since primate eyes are not normally equipped with the tapetum lucidum, a membrane behind the retina that allows the eyes of nocturnal creatures to reflect light and see better in the dark. I like uh, this just even though it's one sentence, I like this medical evidence that is just helping the case that this is something spiritual. The eyes of animals that possess the membrane will shine brightly in the beam of a flashlight or headlights, but normally would not glow of their own accord in the absence of direct light. That's a good point. My speculative layman's idea is that perhaps Bigfoots have developed some kind of convergent eye structure that functions a bit differently from the standard tapetum lucidum, so that it has the ability to super reflect even small amounts of light that appear as glowing red. But since Bigfoots have also been observed functioning well in daylight, this structure would have to be self adjusting. This is almost like Predator, like I'm starting to like it. Perhaps the creature Turner so was still adapting from nighttime to day mode. Turner may have appeared like a blurry flash of light to the Bigfoot as it first tried to focus on the smooth-skinned human at close stage. Man, this is so like in the movie Predator. Like the predator cannot see you well until it just changes,
Yeah.
those modes. Of that's so it's scary, but it's so cool.
Yep.
On the smooth-skinned human at close range, and then turn his whole head side to side to get a better look without the confusion of the eye membrane's glare. The observation of my own that I mentioned above refers not to the eye of a Bigfoot, but to the eye of my very human son. He had surgery for a detached retina a few years ago, followed recently by another operation for cataracts, a very common complication of retinal surgery. Since then, his eyes look like it has a mirror reflecting from inside it, whenever the light catches it just right. Sometimes it looks red depending on the light that's hitting it, exactly as Turner described. The effect is due to an artificial lens implant with a special protective coating. Doug, I think this helps your case that it could be something artificial or army involved with some high tech. I don't know. I'm not saying it is. I'm just.
I have a different theory. Let's finish this section,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you my theory.
Yeah, the lens is a different part of the eye, of course. Than where the the tapetum lucidum should normally be found, but reflective membranes vary widely in structure between different classes of animals. Who's to say that over time Bigfoot hasn't developed its own peculiar version of light magnification suited to its hunting needs? Okay, I'm almost done, and then you can tell your theory. Whatever the explanation, this instance of a blinking, squinting Sasquatch brings me to a wonderful instance of synchronicity to close out this report. As I mentioned, Turner had started out that day aiming to find the grave of Alexander Robinson, or Cheche Pinque. Translated, that name means the squinter or blinking eye. Oh wow. Oh wow, this small detail brings a lot to the story. Okay, I'm
Yep.
almost done. Robinson was said to have had a facial tic, and just like the Sasquatch and Turner encountered, he was well known for constant squinting.
Maybe he saw Robinson. Maybe Robinson became an eternal creature, right? Okay. I like this is really well thought through, this section. I mean, it's very thought through. It's very modern. I don't know what I think about having a spiritual creature evolve this thing, this ability. There's this funny little passage in scripture. Jesus says, the eye is the lamp of the body. So if the eye is the lamp of the body, then you have light inside you, and you open the eye, and light comes out. The eye is the lamp of the body, and if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. Your light in you is darkness. How great is the darkness? In my book, Peace in Your House, I take that scripture and I make it about worldview, and it works. But I don't think what I have learned since I wrote that is that's probably not what Jesus had in mind. And from what I learned from Dr. Heiser is that, see, she's looking at this as very scientific in our modern view of eyes. Light comes in, but throughout human history, it's mostly been thought of that light actually comes out of your eyes when you open them. And if you have darkness in you and you look at someone, you're giving them the evil eye, and that's a curse that hits somebody. It's like a beam of light, of darkness. And you ever been in a room when you know someone is staring at you? You ever been in a room, you know someone is glaring at you? You can feel it.
Yeah.
And you look around, who's glaring at me? And you make eye contact because there's power, there's light coming out of that person. There's something to that, okay? Just because we can dissect the eye and figure out how it works. No. Similarly, if someone is like, that cute girl across the room is looking at you and giving her the eyes, and you're like, someone's looking, oh, hey, baby. It's like there is something to it. All right. Power comes out of your eyes. Maybe if these are spiritual creatures who are embodied, maybe the reason they see the red at night isn't because if it's infrared, but because there's redness in them. There's evil darkness in them. And when they're looking at you, you feel it and you see the red slits of their eyes. And in the daylight, maybe like the reason he saw the mirrors is he's peering that's like he's peering into like the portal-ish, right, to the spirit side, where the other realm, or the side by side. Maybe he's seeing through a window to the side by side or something. Look, it's just spiritual stuff, right? It's just weird. It's myths, mysteries, and majesties. I'm just throwing it out there. We should find that Dr. Heiser episode where he talks about the evil eye, and we should like link it, because that episode, I heard that after my Peace in Your House book, so I have to rewrite that whole section. But because I'm like, oh, I got that part really wrong. But it's so interesting that that's what Jesus is talking about. He's drawing on the idea that something is coming out of you.
Yeah. So I think that the proverb, that it's not in the Bible, but it just said in life that your eyes are mirrors of your soul. I think that's perfectly true. And you can tell sometimes how some people have this. Yeah, you can see that their eyes are not okay. And I don't mean just being tired or sad. That's all of us. But I mean, if someone is going through something like addiction or the occult, they're different. You can see certain dimness, or I don't even know if dimness would be a word, but everyone understand what I mean. There's like lack of uh clarity, like your eyes are not like crystal clear. For some people say they have seductive eyes, and that's true. You can tell like their intention could be seen in their eyes. So yeah, I'm not going into some, you know I don't know,
Yeah.
conspiracy or whatnot, or like crazy stories. I'm just saying that behind everything that we're mentioning tonight, because there's so little mentioned in the scriptures, we're just analyzing this supposed true life stories from what we know, and if we can somehow compare, connect, and see and understand a little bit bigger. But again, most of these things are super creepy, super mysterious, but also super fun, at least for me.
You ever look at in the pre-photography era, when someone had a portrait done? I've been reading a biography of George Washington and looking at these portraits, and also of Alexander Hamilton, and I find these people really fascinating. But when these artists would draw them, and other people in the era, these artists are incredibly skilled, and they would draw their eyes, and sometimes their eyes, not just of these two people, but just different people in the era, their eyes would convey hope, sadness, guardedness. I mean, it's like, you're right. I mean, I think it was Shakespeare who said eyes are the windows to the soul, but it's like there is something, you can tell so much. And these people who would draw these portraits, they're unbelievable artists, that they can convey what they do. I mean, look at Mona Lisa. What is she being conveyed? Everyone looks at her eyes, right, to try to figure out what is being conveyed. But just look at portraits in the pre-modern era, and you can see the artist is trying to capture something, trying to say something about the person being drawn by how they draw the eyes. And it's super fascinating. And I'm not even sure modern artists can do that anymore. But all right, let's wrap this chapter up here. Twice blessed. Amazingly, this encounter may actually have been this is a weird way to say it. Twice blessed with seeing Bigfoot. This encounter may actually have been Turner's second brush with Bigfoot. The first one occurred in 1960 when he was 12 in a different Chicago area public recreation, in a different Chicago public, somewhere else in the Chicago area. It was in a forest preserve at Caldwell Woods, Turner told me, at 6380 West Devon Avenue. At that time, the park featured a gigantic toboggan run. Turner was there in the summer, however, playing softball with friends, when he had to jog to the nearby woods to retrieve a missed pitch. As I walked into the bushes, there's a figure like a gorilla. just sitting there in a yoga position. In 1960, guys, yoga wasn't a thing in the US in 1960. This is before the Beatles, right? The Beatles is what opened up the US to what we have now, which is basically, the United States is basically a Hindu country right now. Okay. A yoga position. Its hair was a dark reddish brown, and it was expressionless, just looking at me. I went back, asked a friend to take a look and see if he could see it too. He came right. So why did he ask that? Because he's already known it's a spiritual thing. He came right back and said he saw the creature walking away. I have always thought how lucky I was to see this thing twice. Turner added this creature had more ape-like face than the more fully covered by hair. Try that again. Turner added that this creature had a more ape-like face that was more fully covered by hair than that of the creature at the Chechepenque Preserve. And he says that almost 5 decades later, he still thinks about those two creatures every day and dreams about them at night as well. I said he dreamed about it. Spiritual creatures, man, these aren't just animals, right? These are both spiritual, or maybe the same, probably different spiritual creatures. Very interesting about the yoga position.
Can I ask a question before you read these statistics?
Yeah.
Over the years, I have heard so many former yoga instructors who converted to Christianity saying that yoga is bad because supposedly every position is pointing to Hindu gods, in a way worshiping him. So even though if you're not praying to them, even though you're not listening to their music, in a way, like all of their positions for stretching and doing exercise is somehow leading to this ultimate. I'm paraphrasing from my vague memory, but I heard and read articles about this multiple times, and because I do that very often, I forget the details. So supposedly there's this ultimate like dragon or whatever figure or whatnot, and many Christians have came out in the last several years warning people, making videos, writing books, writing articles, warning Christians not to get involved in the yoga. But then there are Christians who are like devoted people, real godly people, real what we call born again, and they say, hey, we're doing Christian version of it. We don't do anything bad. We just stretch out because it feels good. We play worship music, Christian worship music with it. We do it with other, girlfriends, or usually it's for late. I mean, mostly it's what women do, and then we go home. Like there's nothing demonic we do. Sometimes they even do yoga in churches. So I just wanted to ask if you have studied this, if you have interviewed a person who is like a former Hindu believer or yoga instructor who came Christian. What is your view when it comes to yoga?
I am very familiar with both sides of the argument. Very familiar. Let me put it this way. I've studied sleep paralysis. Okay, sleep paralysis. I studied it, and we did a paranormal podcast on it. And sleep paralysis, it's a known scientific phenomena that if you sleep a certain way and you have a certain other conditions, that you can experience that, and there's nothing spiritual about it. But that those same conditions leave you vulnerable to spiritual attack. And the non-spiritual version, you wake up, you can't move, you can't breathe, you feel like there's someone in the room, and you're scared, and you eventually come out of it. The spiritual version, it's worse. People have died from sleep paralysis. It's been documented. That's not the normal. People experience it by sleeping on their back, and there's a series of cascading events that cause it. That's just known scientific fact. We know it. But that being in that position opens you up to spiritual attack. Is there anything wrong with sleeping that way? Is it worshiping a demon? No, it's just how sometimes people sleep. And yet, for some reason, that opens you up to spiritual attack. So if you can help it, don't sleep that way. I don't understand the obsession with yoga. Why are people so... I've been attacked viciously by Christians. It has become an idol in some of these churches. There are more yoga classes than Bible studies in this country. The United States is not a Christian country. It is a Hindu country. That is a problem. You want to stretch? Do Pilates. You know what? Better yet, invent a different form of stretch and make them positions that don't accidentally open you up to attack. 95% of people doing yoga probably had nothing go wrong. Probably nothing go wrong. Probably. 5% might open you up to attack. I'm making up numbers. American Christians are obsessed with freedom to do yoga. And I saw someone I respect say, stop arguing about yoga, go help the poor. Yes, go help the poor, for crying out loud. Stop arguing about yoga. Go help the poor. Give your money away to help the poor. Go rescue people from sex slavery. Why are people arguing about yoga? It is a stronghold in this country. And I go back to it. There are more yoga, and this is not a Christian saying this. This is an anthropologist saying it. There are more yoga classes than Bible studies in the United States. And this has happened in the last 20 years. Yeah, let's keep doing yoga because it's worked really well for Christians in this country. Christians obsessed with wealth and money and power and government. And don't you tell me this. I'm doing it with worship music. Oh yeah, your worship music? Have you looked at the lyrics of your worship music? I am shocked at worship music. Read the stinking lyrics. Do you believe these things? I asked my pastor at a church we go to, are we Calvinists? Because the lyrics of this song that is like a top 40 hit on Christian radio that we sing, it's like 5-point Calvinism. I thought we weren't Calvinists. We were Calvinists. We're not Calvinists. Then why we sing this song? Well, it's a great song. Man, if we can't get our singing right, we're arguing over stretches. I am baffled. We argue over everything. Christians argue over everything. Evolution, science, women preaching. Women shouldn't preach. Noah's flood, global, not global. Calvinism, Arminianism, open theism. For crying out loud, go help the poor. I just like yoga, no yoga. I get worked up because we miss the point of the gospel to set us free. If you're arguing over yoga, then you need to be set free. It's become a God in your life. You need to be set free. Jesus died to set us free from the powers, right? Jesus is the Passover lamb. The original Passover lamb was to defeat the gods of Egypt. Why? Those gods over sex, power, and money, they dominated, they enslaved the Israelites and the Egyptians. God destroyed them. We talked about this in the last time. And those protected by the blood of the lamb were protected. The same thing happened on the cross. Jesus taking out the powers and principalities, the gods of sex, drugs, and money, or sex, drugs, and power. Not sex, drugs, and power. Sex, power, and money. Mars, Athens, the gods of war. I mean, you think America's not obsessed with this? The world's obsessed with this? What's the news been covering for the last year and a half? War, sex, and power. Americans are obsessed with it. These are the gods of America. And why do people argue about yoga? You're not going to tell me what to do, or I'm going to do it anyway. It's like, how dare you do this? You have kingdoms. Don't do yoga. Yes, do yoga. Man, it's a god, and it's become a god in the church. We need to slay that sucker. We need to worship the Lord only. I get worked up about it because it becomes such a distraction. You want to believe in evolution? Fine. You want to believe in 6-day literal creation 6,000 years ago? Fine. I don't care. Jesus is king. He is sovereign. He should be sovereign over your exercise too, by the way, because you are a temple. And if your stretches might accidentally worship a pagan god, then don't do it. Go to the Y and run 5K or something. I don't know. Do something else. Like, why are we arguing over that? And you and I aren't arguing. I see the arguments on culture. I see the arguments on it. And it's like today, man, I went to this old country church and sang hymns that were hundreds of years old, and it was so beautiful. The theology in some of these hymns is beautiful. And I like modern worship music. That's why I listen to. On my Apple Music, it'll tell you the stuff you listen to the most for this last year is kind of neat. All right. I looked, it was Upper Room. And the number one song was Christ and Christ Crucified, So it was that's my jam, man. I learned from my daughter up there in Chicago about all this Christian hip hop music, and God help me, I like it. So I've started listening to it. Some of it's really good.
I have to admit, I'm not a fan of contemporary Christian music. I'm not.
I don't blame you.
When it comes to Christian music, I like more, the classical vineyard music. I like Paul Wilbur. Like this music,
so good.
Had biblical, lyrics, and the music was amazing. It's not just on repeat like in last 10 years. Like, like let's make a song that is 15 minutes long with everything just repeating endlessly.
A lot of those songs,
it's becoming boring and it's becoming stale. And there's sometimes lyrics and words like, what is that song that brought so much controversy a few years ago among Christians, where God's love is explained?
Oh, it's and it's the untamable. What is it? It's reckless love.
Yes. So for me, that song, that part of that song, the song is not horrible, but that part is horrible. So whenever we sing that song, when we come and say that, his love is reckless, I stop, because I'm like, no, his love is not reckless. He knew what he was doing. He loved us and loves us despite our rejection of him and sin. It's not like he was like, oh, come and love me because he's like some teenager who's craving for love. No, the Trinity, the Godhead, was in perfect love before the creation of earth. He doesn't need us. He doesn't need us to love us. He already, the God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit love each other perfectly already. This is perfect union of love.
Yeah,
so to say that God is reckless, why is he reckless? Like, you don't know the gospel. I'm sorry, I'm not singing that part. And I see all these amazing Christians. I saw that back in Moody. I saw it in my church, raising hands, singing. And when it comes to that part, I'm like, I get upset. I get upset because I care about theology.
I think some of that, there's other lines in that song that I have issues with too, but I get what the author was trying to say. He just said it terribly. There's another song, like a tidal wave, like a hurricane. I think like a hurricane, that song. Like, no, God tames the hurricane. He's not a hurricane. Okay, like let's teach good theology. You talk about those early Vineyard songs, man. They just took like Isaiah 6 and sang it. Like I see the Lord on the throne. Like he just sang Isaiah 6.
Yeah, nowadays it's a lot of. I'm not saying every song, but
I know. I hear what you're saying.
The last 10 years, it's a lot of repetition, a lot of emotionalism, and a lot of like, it's all like kumbaya, like everything will be fine, just be positive, God loves you. Okay, that's okay. I understand that in one or two songs, but that's not everything. Like older songs, especially hymns, even though I'm not so much a guy from reading and singing old hymns, but they're like wealthy in theology. You can get a sermon from a short poem, from an old hymn.
Yeah, that's what art should do. And I've learned from a friend we have on Facebook about just like Orthodox art and icons and stuff, and that is supposed to convey, it's supposed to teach, and not just generating emotion. And emotion for repentance is fine, it's good, but it should, yes, it should teach. And and if, by the way, your body's a temple, and so look, you should do exercise, you should be healthy. Like the body, we should look at us and think, yeah, that person is healthy because he respects this thing that God has given us stewardship over. All right, that was a rabbit trail, and I got a little.
Hey, that's okay.
I hope that was okay.
If there was some frustration in us, we had to take it out. This was perfect moment. So good. Okay, you want to read the statistics, and then it's my turn.
Is really good. I just want to say the gospel is good. If the gospel doesn't like upset you a little bit, then it's not. Then you've missed the point. The gospel is upsetting. It beats me up a little bit when I'm reading the songs. This is Advent, right? When I'm reading the songs in Luke, there's 4 hymns in Luke 1 and 2 about the gospel, and when I read some of that, I get a little bit upset because I get offended. And if I'm getting offended, and maybe I'm doing it right, right? If I'm comfortable with the gospel, maybe I'm not doing it right. So, okay. Bigfoot, all right. Encounter. So I guess these are just statistics at the end of the chapter. Encounter case summary, Bigfoot in Chicago. Reported creatures, 2 upright Bigfoot-like creatures. And then the location, Schiller Park in Chicago in 1967 and Caldwell Woods Preserve in Chicago 1960. So again, I would love to know this guy's spiritual life. I like to do a whole 360 study of this person. How are your kids? How is their spiritual walk? How's your parents? How are their spiritual walk? Are there any Masons in your history? I would want to go into this because I think a lot of it might be related. All right, conditions: summer, daylight, clear weather, close proximity in both incidents. Associated phenomena, the Oz factor, which I'm not sure what that is. Reported UFO very nearby in same week. That's very interesting. Explained actions, appearances of creatures. In 1967, it attacked the witness with rocks, chased him a long distance to a parking lot, refrained from catching the witness. Creature also seemed to speak in a garbled language of some sorts. Witnesses, a young man, a.k.a. John Turner. Environmental factors, long stretches of nature preserves following the Des Plaines River through Chicago to provide water, good cover, and wildlife. Very interesting.
Yeah, we're done with the chapter. I just want to say, I've been debating with myself in the last hour, so should I say this publicly? But I mean, it's nothing bad. But we also read how this creature was making certain sounds, and then you said that cessationalists, they're like, there are no spiritual gifts for today.
Oh yeah.
For example, in some churches, I cannot be ordained as a minister, regardless of my theology degree, because I don't speak in tongues.
Yeah.
Once when I discovered that, I read I read this ridiculous list of requirements on some website. I'm not saying denomination. I'm not saying website. And I mean, look, we should be biblical. Yeah, there should be the list coming from Paul's pastoral epistles, because they do most when it comes with these requirements, right? And then you see, before even that, you read something like, oh, and the pastor should be speaking in tongues. Okay, we lost Doug. I guess. Okay, he's
I hit a
back.
button.
Oh, you hit the button.
I thought I
thought your laptop died, or you had
no. I was trying to log into the chat. Sorry, chat. I was trying to chat, but
no, it was only a couple of seconds. I'm almost done.
So
yeah, I'm almost done. So I was just saying how we should be biblical. Paul is explaining the requirements, and then I read on this website you should speak in tongues, and I'm like, so you're telling me that me serving God in different ministries all these years, going to Moody for theology degree, getting a great GPA, and yeah, this is me bragging. This is my 2 seconds of fame and glory. You're telling me none of this matters because I don't speak in tongues. Doug, can you believe this? So I mean, I would never mention this on the channel, but we were just talking how, even these supposed creatures, were not, like speaking some
they're garbled
non-human languages, and you're like upset with people who propose cessationalism. The gifts have stopped after the 1st century. And I just want to say how there's another extreme of that. There are people who would like not impose, who want to force you almost to be something or believe in something or do something just so you can be one of them. You can be ordained. And
I mean, it encourages people to fake it.
I was just about to say, I don't want to fake. I can easily go, and if they ask me, I can say, I can just do anything like that. But I don't want to.
Because what is tongues supposed to be? It's I know what you're talking about, the denomination you're talking about. It's supposed to be the evidence that you've been filled with the Holy Spirit. Well, the evidence, but the biblical evidence of being filled with the Holy Spirit is joy, peace, love, blah blah. The fruit of the Spirit. Do you have that?
No, and Doug, what one detail was making me even more frustrated. On their website, when they're like trying to make a case why you should speak in tongues, they're quoting Acts 2. And I'm like, are
I
you
know.
kidding me? In Acts 2, why
Yep.
didn't you? I would understand if you go and quote Paul in epistles when he says, I wish all of you speak in tongues more than me. Okay, I can get that. But in Acts 2, they're all speaking earthly languages. So I could have went for the interview or something and told them, hey, if you're properly exegeting Acts 2 and applying proper hermeneutics, here's talking about human languages. And guess what? I speak minimum 2 languages, and I had Greek at Moody's. So I speak 3 languages. You should give me multiple diplomas. You should give me multiple, like, of course I wouldn't. I'm just messing up.
I
But
know
I'm
you
just
are. I know you're being.
whoever was writing those rules on their website, I don't want to be mean, but when it comes to tongues, is illiterate. It's
It
not
is.
biblical.
And
It's dogmatic, and that's it.
the stuff in Acts 2, I mean, is Acts 2 prescriptive or descriptive? I know what they would say. That tradition's only 100 years old. I mean, that idea that you have to do that to become a minister in that tradition. I grew up in that environment. Okay, I get it. So my question is: did Jesus die on the cross to limit people called in the ministry based on that? I mean, come on. But that Acts 2 is fulfillment of a specific prophecy declaring the coming judgment of Jerusalem. And so, like, it's literally tied to something very specific. I think in Isaiah, I probably had the verse wrong, or the book wrong, but it's all tied together. And we also know it goes back to Babel. Has nothing to do with being filled with the Holy Spirit and moving forward. It's definitely tied. This is that. Peter's like, this is that. Has nothing to do with like qualifications for leadership. And I get, I know, I get it. It's this little church that I'm teaching in for a few weeks, so they find a minister. I can't do communion because I'm not ordained in the tradition. Well, I can't give the bread and the wine because I'm not ordained. It's a tradition. It's a rule that they have. Fine, whatever. I'm going to serve. I'm not going to challenge authority. I've learned not to do that. But it's just these funny traditions that we have.
Yeah. So if, as a Serbian, I'm coming from Eastern Orthodox background, even though I'm not Eastern Orthodox. But the more I'm learning, I'm less against it, even though I don't plan to converting. But I'm just
they thought it out,
I
man.
can I can have brothers and sisters from Catholic Church and Eastern Orthodox Church based on their beliefs, lifestyle, doctrines, whatever. But I asked a question. I asked this guy a question who has not a doctoral degree, but a high degree of when it comes to theology from my country. And he's an Orthodox. So I asked him, hey, if I visit any Orthodox church, would I be allowed to take communion? Because I'm a Christian, and for me, this would be enough. Like everyone should be allowed to come if you have repented and confessed Christ as Lord. Doesn't matter if you're a Christian, you're in Christ. Why not taking communion? He told me, well, if you're not Orthodox, even though the priests, they don't know, but you should stay away. That bugged me because I'm like, I would like to visit some
communion. It's like literally community. It's a reenactment of the Passover meal. I mean, I get some of the tradition. I understand it, and it also misses the point. The gospel is really good, and it's not meant to keep people out because they didn't go through. They didn't they didn't go through 16 steps to join a church.
Yeah, that's why I use this to add on what you were saying, because we mentioned some qualifications when it comes, and then we mentioned tongues, and then you mentioned Eucharist or the communion, and then I added this. There's a lot of rules out there in churches based on personal interpretation and the dogmatic theology of that particular church or faith tradition. And I'm not saying we should not have safeguards and be guarded against bad teachings. Of course we should be. In the past, before I was acquainted with the work of Dr. Michael Heiser, and before I dived more into biblical theology and divine counsel and all this supernatural, I saw myself as an apologist. I was like, I'm gonna fight against these heresies and blasphemies. I'm gonna go and expose all these charlatans who are like taking money from people, who are teaching false stuff, who are like committing all these Christological heresies. That's how I saw myself. And if I would ever open a channel when I was younger, a little bit younger, that's what I will be doing. But the point is, like, even though we should be on guard, we should be like those watchmen on the wall, not the fallen watchers, but the watchmen in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
There should be also this unity, like, hey, for me, this may be the best mug in the world when it comes to drinking coffee. To you, maybe it's something else, or maybe this is my favorite color, even though it's not. But to you, maybe it's green, like your sweater. I don't think this small detail should separate us and cause division. And to some people, I'm not saying Eucharist is small. I'm not saying taking or
There
seeing
used to be
Jesus'
wars
body.
over the Eucharist. There used to be
Yeah,
wars. They would
yeah,
kill each other over how to baptize.
yeah,
And that's
yes,
the
yeah.
point, people.
That was one of the biggest reasons why in the 11th century the church split between the East and the West. And I get
Mhm.
it. I'm not saying these are small things, but don't dismiss. I'm just trying to quote Paul. Don't dismiss someone for whom Jesus died over these
Right.
secondary, issues. Um, Okay, I just want to say something before we're done. I know that we plan to cover one more chapter, but because it took us 2 hours to go through this chapter and comment and add all these UFO, military, biblical, Old Testament stuff, we passed 2 hours. So I think we can leave that for some other time. Do you
Yep,
agree?
I agree. I promised my wife I wouldn't be 3 hours again.
Yes. Okay. Well, do you have any concluding thoughts, Doug? Not about tongues, not about Eucharist, because we didn't even
Yeah.
plan mentioning these things. But when it comes to this chapter on UFOs and Bigfoot and all these spiritual slash animalistic phenomena happening not just in Chicago but wherever, do you have any concluding thoughts, both for Christians and non-Christians?
If it's weird, it's important. Keep an open mind, but not so open that your brain falls out. And that's my only concluding thought.
Okay, I heard both slogans. Okay, the first one, of course, was said by late Dr. Michael Heiser. Everyone in our DCW Facebook group knows about that slogan. And the other one I also heard, and it's very true, because you always hear people like, be open-minded, be open-minded. It's usually to accept sin. In my experience, what I've witnessed, usually when people say be open-minded, it's usually to accept some form of sin, because
Yeah.
people want to be so free from what God says. No, you should be open-minded because this may be yellow, so you should be open-minded because maybe for you this is this color. But so that's where I draw my line, and I get frustrated, and I just I don't want to argue with people. I mind my own business. But I like that saying, have open-minded. Yeah, we should have open-minded, but also be guarded, because again, there should be this middle ground of having this discipline of knowing the Bible, but not to be rigid and closed-minded, because God did not put everything that exists in this cosmos within 1,000 pages. That would be impossible, right? That would be
I think
impossible.
like have a growth mindset, be teachable, be humble. You don't know everything. I mean, the older I get, I hope I stay humble and teachable and like faith, like childlike faith. Why? What's he say? Wise as serpents, peaceful as doves, something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah.
So yeah, be wise, but have childlike faith. Be teachable. You don't understand it all. Your system is wrong. Okay, it may not be 100% wrong, right? When we see Jesus, we'll be caught up to be just like him. Until then, we're just on the journey, right? We're on the journey to be like Christ. And so it's okay. Like, be teachable, be humble, keep growing, because he really loves you. The gospel is really good news.
I just want to say last thing. It's interesting in that passage how Jesus is actually complimenting people, believers, to be like serpents, even though we were taught throughout the Bible and in our churches how serpents resemble this evil. Like serpent equals Satan, because right, we know in Proto-Evangelion in Genesis 3 what's happening, but it's not saying that
Like Satan. It's
the
like
snake was just a regular animal snake,
right.
and it doesn't conclude that snakes are evil. Excuse me, just because yes, they bite, they attack humans, but they also, not all of them are like that. So there
They
is
can
certain
survive in the
wisdom.
wilderness. They and that's what they were equated with wisdom, because somehow they're surviving in the desert. Everything dies in the desert, but somehow these snakes are like slithering around. How do they do that?
And look at the seraphim, one of the closest
Yes.
divine beings close to God, and they look like flying serpentine beings. So
Seraphim. Yep.
yeah, this is like a totally another episode. I just want to start and then stop.
Yeah, it's like, it's Jesus, this guy's supernatural experience. You can't deny a supernatural experience, but what the Lord would do, he would use supernatural experiences to let people's mind, like their fixed mindset, shatter, and he would reshape their minds with teachings to be more like him. And so, audience, if you have a supernatural experience and it shakes your worldview, allow the Lord, like, this is when you learn to submit to the Lord so he can reshape it to be more like him. So,
yeah. Doug, I really enjoyed. I'm really thankful because, as I told you in private message, when my Atlantis guy canceled for today, before asking you, asked around 15 people to join me for tonight and do the same thing. I told them, don't be scared. I just need you to have fast internet and decent camera. I'll provide the sources. We'll just read and comment. No agenda, no outlines. As I always write outlines, but I'm like, you can just speak from your mind, be biblical, and be open to this mysterious stuff. That's it. It's easy and it's enjoyable. So many people deny me. So many people rejected. So many people, like, they didn't know, or they had some other stuff to do. And I'm like, hey, maybe ask Doug again. So I'm so thankful, that I didn't have to go through this alone, because it's never fun as, if you're doing just alone. So thank you so much. I'll be posting your Amazon link so people can support your work.
okay.
I wish you God's blessing. When you come again to Chicago, let me know.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward, hopefully in spring or something like that, or maybe even before, to have another episode with you where we'll be talking about some other supernatural topics.
Yeah, sounds great, man. Appreciate it. Talk to you later.
Thanks so much. God bless.
Bye, everybody.